We used the X32 for nearly a decade, and honestly, it served us really well. But over the past year, we've been using the Behringer Wing, and I've got to say, it was absolutely worth the upgrade. Not just for the cool factor, but because it solved several pain points we were running into with the X32. If you're wondering whether the Wing is worth the jump, especially for a church setting, stick around. I can't even count the number of times we've been ready to start our pre-service rehearsal and someone isn't coming through anymore. And lo and behold, something in the routing got changed. Then I'm back there flipping through the 50 routing pages on the X32 to figure out where the problem is. If you've been there, let me know. This area for me is probably the biggest win for the Wing. It makes routing so much easier and way more flexible. On the X32, you had to think in blocks of 8, which worked until it didn't. Anytime we needed to get creative with the live stream or multi-track routing, it felt like solving a puzzle. On the Wing, you just patch what you want, where you want it, no blocks, no limitations. I also love how every channel strip on the Wing is a blank slate. You can assign any source to any strip. This kind of flexibility is technically possible on the X32 with user inputs, but it gets messy fast. On the Wing, it just works, and it makes organizing your board exactly how you want it a lot easier. When we first got the Wing, it did take me a second to wrap my head around how routing worked, since I was used to the hassle of the X32. But once I got it down, I was able to solve routing problems in probably like half the time that I could on the X32. The touchscreen is another game changer. It's intuitive and a lot easier to train volunteers on. But that doesn't mean that the Wing is simple. The OS is deeper, and if you're coming from the X32, it will take some time to wrap your head around it. It's very different, but once you get it, you'll love it. We even have a course that helps you speed up the learning curve. Check out our Wing Mastery course via the link in the description. The Wing gives you 48 stereo channels compared to the X32's 40 mono channels. That might sound like a small jump, but it's actually a big deal. On the Wing, every channel can be stereo without eating up 2 strips like on the X32. So not only do you get more channels, but your layout stays clean and manageable, perfect for keys, tracks, or anything stereo. Just remember that you only get 8 XLR ins and outs and 8 aux ins and outs on the back of the Wing. On the Compact, you do get 24 combo ins and 8 outs. So to utilize all of its channels, you do have to have digital stage boxes. If you're wondering whether you have to replace your stage boxes, the answer is no. We're still using our old S32 and it works great. Same goes for P16 personal mixers. Routing to them is just a little bit different, but it's still fully supported. The Wing is great for multi-track recording and virtual sound checks. You can record 64 channels straight to SD cards, no computer required. Playback is really easy as well, whether you're running a virtual sound check or just fine-tuning your live stream mix later on. It's worth noting that the X32 does have the option to swap out your standard USB expansion card with the X Live card. This allows you to record up to 32 channels to an SD card, as well as maintain your USB interface. Mixing on the Wing sounds better. There's more headroom, cleaner processing, and overall, the sound feels more open. It's not a night and day difference, but it's noticeable, especially when you're EQing or compressing vocals. It feels more pro. I remember the first Sunday we used it, even our in-ears with the P16 sounded different. It took a decent amount of adjusting to get things right, but I was able to dial in an in-ear mix that I was way happier with from the Wing. It also gives you 16 effect slots compared to the X32's 8. So if you're limited on effects that you want to use, that might be a good reason to upgrade. You even have the option to swap out the standard processing plugins on individual channels without utilizing an effect slot, which is really cool. Another cool feature on the Wing is its fully customizable fader pages, group channels, buses, matrices, or DCAs however you want. You're not stuck with the normal fixed layers like on the X32. And since customization is tied to the source rather than the channel strip, things stay clean when you rearrange. On the full-size Wing, you get 2 different custom pages on both full fader banks, plus 2 on the main fader bank that can all show different things. On the Wing Compact, you're limited to 2 custom pages on the one full-size fader bank, plus a single custom page on the mains fader bank. The customization doesn't end there. You also get an entire section of customizable knobs and buttons. The possibilities are pretty endless here. Keep in mind that all of this customization can make running your mixer more difficult if you don't know the mixer well. Keep this in mind if your team is more beginner than advanced. We don't use custom controls very much in our workflow. The only thing we have mapped to them is GEQ controls for the EQ on the mains. It makes it a lot more enjoyable to dial in that EQ as opposed to using the knobs on the screen. Some people will probably find a lot of value in the custom controls and some won't. You can mix wirelessly from a tablet or phone using the Wing Copilot app or mixing station, but just like the X32, the Wing doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi, so you'll need to hook up an external router to the Ethernet port. Once that's set up, it works great. We just have ours connected to our main network. If I'm being honest, the Wing apps could use some help. It's also kind of annoying that they're split up into 2 different apps. We just use mixing station. It works really well and it's pretty affordable. Now, one thing Behringer hasn't made easy is the actual transition. You can't just import your X32 scene into the Wing. There's a third-party app that we found that helps, but it doesn't get everything right. What helped us was documenting our setup before the upgrade, especially routing. We took time to clean things up and plan ahead. I recommend setting aside at least a full day for the switchover, keeping your X32 nearby for reference. Just know your EQs and processing won't translate perfectly. The plugins and gain structure are different, so be prepared to make adjustments. Think of it as a fresh start to get things sounding even better. One thing you should definitely redo from scratch is the EQ on your mains. We have a video to help you out with that I'll leave linked in the description. Also, be sure to grab our free vocal starter snap down in the description to help you get started on the right foot with the most important part of your mix. On that topic, I will tell you that the workflow for saving scenes is very different on the Wing. They've improved it with recent firmware updates, and I think it works really well. If you're running a smaller setup and the X32 is doing everything you need, you're probably fine to stick with it. The Wing is awesome, but it really shines when your workflow starts getting more complex and limited, or if you're running out of channels. For us, it was worth it because we were hitting those limitations regularly. But if that's not your world yet, there's no pressure to upgrade. If you've got questions I didn't cover, drop them in the comments. I'd be happy to help however I can. And be sure to check out the video on your screen to see how Cade sets a compressor for vocals on the Wing. Thanks for watching to the end. I'll see you next time.